All right, we made it to part 2. I'm gonna get a little more advanced here. I'm gonna start using some altered notes and incorporating some blues elements. So here's lick number 11. It's a classic lick that uses the altered scale. Check it out. Sometimes you'll hear a variation on this lick where the second note is a flat 9 instead of the 7. And if you remember the freshman arpeggio lick from part 1, this altered lick is pretty similar. I'm going to put them both into this example on a 2-5-1 chord progression. Check this out. Remember, licks are just like words, and the whole point is to put them together to create sentences. So here's another example. I'm going to start with that freshman descending arpeggio, followed by lick number 11, which we're going to call the Cliche altered lick because it's such a common line that's played using the altered scale. And then we're going to follow it up with the giant steps lick, and then do one more freshman arpeggio, this time going up instead of coming down. Lick number 12 is another altered scale lick. I learned this one from my first saxophone teacher, Vincent, and I think he said that he picked it up from a Vincent Herring solo, who probably picked it up from a Sonny Stitt solo. But for now, let's just call it the Vincent Herring lick. Lick number 13 is one of my favorites. It's a lift from a Joshua Redman solo off of a tune he recorded called Jig-a-Jug. This is a great record. Highly recommend you check it out. It's live at the Village Vanguard. But this lick is over a 2-5-1 in the key of D flat major. And take a look at those last two measures. We've got a reverse giant steps lick followed by an ascending freshman arpeggio lick. Lick number 14, I call this one the rhythm changes lick because it works really well over a rhythm changes. Lick number 15 shows up in a lot of different solos. I have a couple examples here. This first example is from another Joshua Redman solo. This is off the tune When the Sun Comes Down. Now I'm really only focusing on a few notes here. On the 5 chord, we've got that 13, then it goes up to the root, and then it comes down to the flat 13. And then there's this flurry of descending notes. So let's go to another example where you can see that same thing in action. Here's one of my favorite lines of all time. This is from a Michael Brecker solo on the tune Confirmation. And if you look at that measure with the F7 chord, we've got the 13 going up to the 1, coming back to the flat 13, and then that flurry of descending notes. Also, it's worth mentioning that on that C minor 7 measure, we've got a freshman arpeggio going all the way up. So now let's take that nugget with the 13 and the root and the flat 13 followed by the flurry of notes going down. Let's take all that and create a new line. And I'm going to do that by adding some material to the beginning and the end. On to lick number 16, I learned this one from another one of my saxophone teachers, Jerry Bergonzi, and it goes like this. I love this one because it emphasizes that flat 9 at the bottom of the arpeggio. Here's a variation of the Bergonzi line using a triplet. All right, lick number 17 is really easy to play. There's not much to it. It's just going to be the 4 to the 3 to the 1 to the 5. I like this sound a lot because it's more modern. The reason being, you've got that fourth there. A lot of the arpeggios we've used thus far feature thirds, but here we have this fourth, and that makes a big difference in terms of how modern it sounds. Thirds have a more traditional sound, and fourths sound more modern. And you know my favorite thing to do with these simple lines is to move them around to other parts of the scale. So here's that same shape, but starting on the 5th. So now we have 5, sharp 11, 9, 6. Here it is once more starting on the root. So we have root 7, 5, 9. The truth is, because of the modern flavor this lick has, you can kind of play it anywhere you want and it's still going to sound good. Here's an example where I just keep transposing it up whole steps on a C major 7 chord. You can also play this lick on minor 7 chords when you start on the 3. You can also start on the 7. So let's call lick number 17 the modern triad down, and that's because lick number 18 we're going to call the modern triad up. It's not the complete reverse of lick number 17, but it still has a modern feel to it. Check it out. Here it is again, starting on the 2, aka the 9. So in C major, we can analyze this going down 2, 1, and then 7, then arpeggiate up 2, 5, 6, 7. But if you look at it with a different lens, you'll see what's being outlined here is actually a G major triad. So if we disregard the C major 7 chord for a second and just think of this whole thing in G, we've got 5-4-3, 5-1-2-3. It's not too complicated when you analyze it like that. And now we're going to outline the 2 chord over that C major 7. So the 2 of C major 7 is D. So now we're outlining a D major triad. Here's a combination of licks 17 and 18. We're going to start with the modern triad up, followed by the modern triad down. Lick number 19 is kind of a callback to lick number 1, but instead of playing 7-1-3-5-7, we're going to play 7-1-2-5-7. And again, that's going to create a more modern sound because of that 4th interval between the 2nd and the 5th. I kind of discovered this lick on my own. I was getting tired of sounding so traditional and bebop because I'd been studying that language for such a long time, and I realized I could take a lot of the vocabulary that I had already learned and just tweak it a little bit to create a whole new sound. Here's a variation on what I'll call the modern freshman, and instead of ending with that 7 on top, we're going to come back down with a 7 on the bottom. Now here's a really cool combo of a few of these modern licks. So we're going to start with the modern triad up, followed by the modern triad down, and then go right into the freshman arpeggio, followed by a little tag at the end. Of course, we can use the modern freshman arpeggio on minor chords as well. Here it is, starting on the 9 to the 3 to the 4 to the 7 to the 9. And I really like this next application. We're going to take that same shape, but start it on the sharp 11 of a dominant 7th chord. All right, let's wrap up part 2 with a real bluesy line. Love this lick because you'd expect it to go from the 6 up to the 1, but instead it goes from the 6 to the 9. It's a little bit of a fake out, and it sounds so good, especially with that flat 3 turn at the end. Here's an extended version of that lick with some extra bluesy material at the end.